5 examples of real-world leaders who wielded the power of communication. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about a truly fascinating topic: the power of communication in leadership. The best leaders in the world all have something in common. They're excellent communicators. Being able to communicate effectively plays a major role when it comes to inspiring groups of people, whether you're trying to get them to support your ideas, beliefs, and theories, or simply to work together on specific tasks. Leaders who rely solely on their expertise in certain domains may find that they face challenges when their communication skills fall short. This happens more often than you might think, and it's one of many reasons why learning how to hone your communication skills is so important. If you're looking for some inspiration to get started on improving your communication skills, then you've come to the right place. Let's talk about 5 examples of real-world leaders who wielded the power of communication. 1. Mahatma Gandhi, a remarkable leader known not only for his wisdom, but also for his exceptional communication skills. When India and Pakistan were facing potential conflict in 1948, Gandhi displayed his true communication prowess. He started off his speech by addressing global concerns and then skillfully transitioned to the specific issue at hand. What made Gandhi stand out was his knack for driving into the nitty-gritty details of India and Pakistan's actions, all while using simple and clear language that everyone could easily understand. This illustrates the lasting impact of clear and straightforward communication. 2. Martin Luther King Jr. When it came to excellent communication skills, Martin Luther King Jr. was truly something else. You've probably heard his "I Have a Dream" speech, right? In this speech, he honed his passion and used something called anaphora to get his point across. Anaphora is when you repeat the same phrase at the start of different sentences so that it resonates and sticks with your audience. In his "I Have a Dream" speech, Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I have a dream" 8 times, and sprinkled in some other well-placed repetitions as well. This undoubtedly left his audience with a sense of hope and inspiration, which was much needed when it came to fighting the good fight. 3. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, a prominent leader of the 20th century, was known for his incredible communication skills. In a time that was marked by uncertainty, Churchill's words were a source of hope and resilience for many. He understood the importance of delivering concise yet profound messages and recognized that people are more likely to remember a short, impactful statement than a lengthy and lackluster one. 4. Oprah Winfrey. There's a reason why Oprah Winfrey is so beloved as a leader. She grasps a fundamental truth that listening can be just as, if not more, important than speaking when it comes to effective communication. Oprah's success as a leader is certainly a testament to how honesty and openness can make a difference when you're giving a speech or simply having a conversation with someone. 5. Kenneth Lin. Kenneth Lin, the CEO of Credit Karma, is known for his outstanding communication skills. Credit Karma places a strong emphasis on open communication, and Lin, in particular, is committed to having an open-door policy. He states, "I want new employees to feel like this is a mission we're all in together. An open-door policy sets the tone for this. Whenever I'm in my office and available, I encourage anyone to come by and share their thoughts about how they feel Credit Karma is doing." 5 reasons why communication is a must-have skill for leaders. When we consider influential leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Ronald Reagan, or Barack Obama, a commonality between them always tends to be their ability to communicate effectively. Clearly, the importance of effective communication cannot be overstated. Why, you might ask? That's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this presentation. Here are 5 reasons why communication is a must-have skill for leaders. 1. It'll help you develop a bond with your team. Usually, you can tell whether or not a leader is good by how well their team is able to work together towards a common goal. Oftentimes, team members don't just start working together seamlessly. Their ability to work together is a product of their leaders' excellent communication skills. When your communication falls short, you'll likely notice that your team members have a more difficult time reaching their goals. They may fail to understand their responsibilities or get into unnecessary conflicts with their coworkers. All of this is avoidable as long as you're honing your communication skills often and effectively. 2. It'll help build trust and rapport. Trust is basically the glue that holds a team together, and strong leaders take deliberate steps to create and build trust among their team members. One effective way to build trust is to openly and clearly define each team member's roles and responsibilities for a specific project before it kicks off. This approach should help to minimize any potential confusion within your team and create a sense of trust in you as their leader. It'll also help you build rapport with your team members, which is a great way to ensure that your top talent will stay around for the long haul. 3. It can help build transparency. Being open and transparent is super important when it comes to bridging the communication gap between leaders and their teams. Surprisingly, it's pretty common for managers and executives to have limited knowledge about their organization. This lack of awareness regarding company policies and goals can sometimes result in decreased productivity. That said, if you're able to gain the appropriate knowledge about your organization and openly discuss the organization's goals with your team members, you'll be able to establish that much-needed sense of trust. 4. It will inspire more active listening. Honing your communication skills means practicing active listening. Practicing active listening means actually hearing what your team members are saying when they're talking to you. Mainly, it's about knowing when to pause and give them the space they need to express their feelings and opinions. Showing your team members that you're an active listener will make them feel more inclined to come to you with their questions and concerns when they're struggling, so it's a great skill to have. Being an active listener is also being a great role model. It should inspire everyone to practice active listening, which should improve overall communication in the office tenfold. 5. It'll give you the ability to receive and implement feedback. You'll never really know whether you're a great leader or communicator unless you directly ask the people you're constantly leading and communicating with. The best leaders are always willing to learn, so you should be open to constructive criticism. Chances are your team members will have some helpful constructive criticism to offer you. Just be open and honest with them about the fact you're trying to learn and improve, and they should be happy to help. Once you've gained a solid amount of constructive criticism, you'll be able to implement it and further demonstrate to your team members that their opinions matter to you. 5 tips for storytelling for stronger communicators. What's the best way to capture and keep an audience's attention? Through storytelling, of course. In this presentation, I'll be going over 5 tips for storytelling for strong communicators. Telling stories effectively takes quite a bit of practice, but as long as you keep these tips in mind, you should be able to keep your audience's attention and maybe even inspire them to engage by asking questions. Let's get started. 1. Know your audience. Before telling your story, it's important that you know your audience. Ask yourself these questions. Is your story about to tell something this particular audience will relate to? Is this story relevant to their concerns? Will it evoke an emotional response? Most stories or personal anecdotes are interesting depending on the way in which you tell them, but people will generally be more engaged by stories they can resonate with. Be aware of the pain points your audience might be dealing with, and make sure the stories you tell during your speech or presentation are relevant. 2. Be authentic. When telling stories during speeches or presentations, you should always be authentic. Don't tell stories that don't feel genuine to you or make up a bunch of details purely for shock value. Chances are your audience will be able to tell when you're not being genuine. If your audience senses that you're not being authentic, they might begin to question your integrity as a leader and communicator. This might make them feel suspicious of you, like you're lying to them, in which case they probably won't feel inclined to listen to you. 3. Have a clear message. Storytelling is great, but it's also quite easy to get carried away while telling a story. This is why it's a good idea to have a clear message in mind before you start crafting your story. The message you're trying to deliver to your audience is the whole point of you telling the story in the first place. So while you're coming up with the story you want to tell, make sure that it connects with your overall message. Basically, the last thing you want to do is get lost in your story. It should have an obvious beginning, middle, and end, and your main message should get through to your audience without you having to explicitly state it, though you certainly can if you wish to do so. 4. Practice. It's true what they say. Practice makes perfect. Your comfort and confidence when it comes to telling stories should improve with time and lots of practice. If you're new to storytelling, you might want to start by telling stories to your friends and family members. This way, you can gauge some reactions to your stories in a judgment-free zone. The wonderful thing about storytelling is that it fits naturally with how we communicate. As you give yourself the chance to practice regularly, you'll probably find that storytelling becomes something you do rather effortlessly and spontaneously. 5. Use emotions. It won't always be necessary to make people cry, but if you're making people feel something while giving a speech or presentation, you're definitely doing something right. While telling a story that you're really passionate about, you might find yourself getting genuinely emotional. This is something you should lean into, as people tend to respond quite strongly to emotional displays. You don't have to make a big show out of it, but if something you're talking about is making you laugh or cry, let it out. Keep yourself contained, of course, but don't be afraid to show the genuine emotions you're feeling. In this presentation, I'll be discussing the 10 most important do's and don'ts of communication for leaders. 1. Be a good listener. Practice active listening and keep focus on the person speaking. Ask clarifying questions if necessary. Don't interrupt others when they're talking. No one likes being interrupted while they're speaking. Instead of the dialogue being one-sided, you should take the time to listen and thoughtfully respond to what the other person is saying to you. 2. Be concise. As a leader, it's important that you're able to get your message across in a way that's as direct and concise as possible. Don't overcomplicate your message. While speaking, don't use too many abbreviations or technical terms. This might confuse the person you're talking to and ultimately make things more complicated than they need to be. 3. Behave confidently. Your audience wants to know that you're stable and confident as a leader. Making a lot of eye contact and speaking with a clear voice is a great way to convey exactly this. Don't be defensive. It's okay to have passion, but don't get defensive or offensive for that matter. This can be off-putting to some and may come across as unprofessional. 4. Be open to constructive feedback. Nobody's perfect, and as a leader, you should be accepting of the fact. The best leaders are open to learning new things, so you shouldn't hesitate to take any constructive feedback from your audience seriously. Don't criticize. Criticizing your audience, or anyone for that matter, is generally just a bad look when it comes to public speaking and other forms of communication. 5. Assert yourself. Take the time to recognize the needs and opinions of others, and then calmly state your own needs and opinions. Don't show negative body language. Try not to frown, shrug, or slouch while speaking. This will show your audience that you're uncertain and perhaps not very confident. 6. Think about your audience. When prepping for a speech or meeting, remember to tailor it to your audience as much as you can. Don't talk too fast. This tends to happen when people are nervous. Take a deep breath and slow down while speaking. That way your audience will be able to understand you better. 7. Do learn how to say no. Remember, you don't have to say yes to everything. Be firm but polite when saying no, and stand your ground if they continue to push. Don't be a doormat. While it's generally encouraging to involve others in your decision making processes, you shouldn't let another person take over completely. Again, this is about learning how to say no. 8. Do be professional. Leaders sometimes lean too much into being casual. While you can keep your communication style conversational, you should also remain professional. Don't gossip. You should also stay away from office gossip. Nothing good can come from talking negatively about others behind their backs. 9. Do praise people often. Everyone deserves a little praise and recognition now and then. The best leaders make time to appreciate their employees, usually individually and publicly. Don't judge people. You never know what could be going on in another person's life. More often than not, there's no reason to start casting stones, especially without asking any questions first. 10. Do express negative thoughts positively. This may seem a little counterintuitive, but it's important that you don't bring any negativity into the office or whatever space you're in as a leader. Don't self-deprecate. If you mess up, simply apologize and move on. There's no need to dwell on your mistakes after all. In this presentation, we're going to be talking about 10 tips for communicating like a leader, especially during times of challenge. As a leader, you have a responsibility to support your team members and communicate with them effectively during challenging times. It can be difficult to know where to start when it comes to communicating like a leader, but these tips should help. Let's get started. 1. Acknowledge that times are challenging and show empathy. We're definitely facing some challenging times right now, and it's only natural for worries, uncertainties, and a bunch of conflicting priorities to pile up. As a leader, being empathetic is crucial when things get tough. So make sure to reach out, practice active listening when your team members are speaking to you, and team up with your colleagues to come up with solutions that work for everyone. 2. Communicate more than usual. No matter what your typical communication style is, you're likely going to have to increase your communication frequency pretty significantly. Remember to share important updates with your team members immediately and use one-on-one meetings to gauge how your employees are really feeling. 3. Be a role model. Keep in mind that as a leader, you'll be setting the tone for your team. This will be especially true during times of challenge. It's important that you steer clear of cynicism and model positive energy surrounding potential solutions and growth opportunities for the company. This will help make your team members feel grounded and like they can trust in your leadership. 4. Focus on building resilience. Have open and honest conversations with your team members about building resilience. Inspire your team members to set boundaries that work for them. Try to emphasize the importance of putting their mental and physical health front and center. This will make them feel well cared for and should help to strengthen their resilience as well. 5. Listen. In this day and age, it's more important than ever to practice active listening and show empathy while your employees are speaking. Active listening is a super valuable skill when it comes to guiding people's emotions in a positive direction. It'll help you truly understand the challenges that your team members are dealing with, as well as identify areas where you could potentially help them cope. 6. Encourage and support flexibility. Ask each of your team members how they prefer to work and offer them flexibility and support when it comes to things like working from home and time off requests. Allowing your employees this flexibility will empower them to perform at their very best. 7. Show gratitude. Especially in tough times, when stress is running high, you should remind yourself and your team members to say thank you to each other. After all, everyone's putting in their best efforts, and a little thank you every now and then can make a big difference. 8. Be authentic. People want to follow someone who's honest and sincere, regardless of whether or not times are tough. Don't worry too much about sounding eloquent. Just focus on being genuine. Masking your true self will only make people uncomfortable, and some may even question your leadership skills. 9. Be direct. When leading a meeting or giving a speech, avoid overcomplicating things. It's important that you be direct while communicating and make sure that your team members understand what you're talking about. 10. Take feedback seriously. You should encourage your team members to give you feedback on your leadership style. More importantly, you should actually take their feedback into consideration and use it to improve your leadership skills. In this presentation, I will be going over 10 tips you can follow to become a more effective speaker. Even the most experienced public speakers often get the jitters before a speaking event. Here are some tips you should know if you'd like to improve your public speaking skills. 1. Consider your audience. Your ability as a speaker is ultimately judged by the people who listen to you, your audience. A lot of people struggle with this tendency to focus too much on themselves when giving a speech. Try to move your attention away from self-doubt and worries about potentially stumbling over your words or forgetting what you want to say. 2. Adapt your style to your audience. A great public speaker knows how to adjust their style based on who they're speaking to. When you're prepping to give a speech, try practicing in the mirror using different styles. As you gain more experience with public speaking, you may even be able to tweak your approach, not just when getting ready for a talk, but also on the fly if you notice that your style isn't clicking with your audience. 3. Be consistent. Being an effective speaker isn't just about choosing the right words. It's about sending the right signals. If your nonverbal cues don't line up with your words, you risk potentially confusing your audience. When speaking, your facial expressions should reflect the passion you're feeling. You should try to use hand gestures and occasionally change your position on the stage to keep your audience engaged. 4. Captivate your audience. A dull, overly factual speech won't hold your audience's interest for long. If you need to convey facts, keep it concise. Use metaphors and analogies to get your point across, and tap into your audience's emotions by telling personal anecdotes or stories. 5. Be yourself. While giving a speech is similar to giving a performance, you shouldn't think of yourself as an actor assuming a role. Just be yourself. If you're pretending to be someone you're not, chances are your audience will see right through you. 6. Imagine your success. Imagine the perfect speech in your mind. Really immerse yourself in it. What do you see, hear, smell, and feel? How do the people around you respond? What are they doing and saying? When you mentally live through your ideal presentation, it can help you to summon the courage and confidence you need when giving the actual speech. 7. Listen to other speakers. Consider what draws you to a particular speaker. Is it the gestures they make while talking? The passion in their voice? Perhaps it's their use of facial expressions that leaves an impression. Try experimenting in front of a mirror to figure out what feels most natural to you, and give these things a try the next time to give a speech. 8. Get a good night's sleep. Sleep is incredibly important. Not only does it make your memory better, but it'll amplify your capacity to learn, as well as make it easier for you to gauge how your audience is responding during your speech. 9. Prepare. When you see a great speaker in action, it might seem like they're just improvising. Most of the time, though, the reason they seem so relaxed is because they've practiced a lot. Before giving your speech, I'd recommend practicing in the mirror and even recording yourself a few times. 10. Answer questions. Some people in the audience will likely have questions, and you should be prepared to answer them. When someone asks you a question, be straightforward. Don't talk about something that's not relevant or act like you don't want to answer the question being asked. In this presentation, I'm going to be delving into how to get people to listen to your message instantly. This will not only pertain to giving speeches to big groups or people, but to leading small groups and communicating one-on-one with others as well. There are plenty of reasons why it may seem like people aren't listening to you. Perhaps some people are having trouble grasping what you're saying, or maybe your audience just isn't engaged. The good news is, there are lots of strategies you can use to get people to listen to you and hear your message instantly. Let's talk about them now. 1. Tell stories. People love stories. That's why it's a great idea to tell stories and personal anecdotes to engage your audience. When telling stories to keep people engaged, there are a few things you'll want to keep in mind. First, make sure you describe the scene well. Give your listeners a clear picture of what was happening and who was involved. Second, don't forget to share your emotions while telling the story so that your audience can connect with what you were feeling at the time. You should also try to keep your stories relatively concise, as no one wants to listen to a story that drones on and on. 2. Use humor. Not everyone is a natural-born comedian, but even if you're not the best at cracking jokes, you can still use humor to engage your audience. One effective technique is to surprise your audience by defying their expectations, such as saying yes when the obvious answer should be no, or vice versa. Another approach is to play with the characteristics of your characters when telling a story. If there's a trait clearly associated with one character, it might be funny to attribute it to a different character unexpectedly. You may also want to observe some comedians on YouTube and see how they tell stories while incorporating humor. 3. Capture your audience's attention. Using attention-grabbing opening sentences like, "I had the strangest experience the other day," "You won't believe who I ran into at the grocery store," or "We met in the funniest way," can honestly work wonders when it comes to drawing your audience in. The introductory sentences you use will set the tone for your story and speech as a whole. It'll engage your audience much more than simply reading out a bunch of facts or presenting a slideshow full of walls of text. The reason for this is that these types of sentences make people feel like you're talking directly to them, which is very engaging. 4. Have a thesis statement. The thing about storytelling is you don't want to get completely bogged down in it. Your audience will want to know your thesis statement, basically the goal of your presentation or speech, early on. So make sure to tell them what your thesis statement is in an engaging way. For example, if you're pitching a new market strategy to your team members, you might start your presentation with something like, "I'm convinced that using this marketing approach will drive higher conversions and engagement." Then, explain why you're convinced this is the case. 5. Be confident. People are naturally drawn to confidence. To boost your confidence, try to remove any filler words from your vocabulary. People will unfortunately be able to tell that you're struggling with confidence if you're constantly filling space with like or You can also show your confidence by how you carry yourself. Don't slouch, make eye contact with the audience, and don't be afraid to take up space. How to overcome the fear of public speaking as a leader. Public speaking isn't easy, and plenty of people actually suffer from a fear of public speaking. This fear can, thankfully, be overcome, which is what I'm going to be talking about in this presentation. A lot of people with a fear of public speaking will try to avoid public speaking situations altogether. Even if they know the people they're speaking to fairly well, they might still feel a great deal of anxiety and dread about giving a speech in front of them. Let's talk about some strategies you can use to overcome the fear of public speaking, especially if you're a leader. 1. Get organized. When you're preparing to give a speech or presentation, it's always a smart move to carefully plan out what you want to share. This will include having any props or visuals you want to use at the ready. The better prepared you are, the less nervous you're likely to feel because you actually step up to speak. Using a brief outline on a note card can also be quite helpful when it comes to staying on track while giving a speech. 2. Practice, practice, practice. Practice your entire presentation several times to make sure you're fully ready. Don't hesitate to ask for feedback on your speech or presentation from both your close friends and people you might not be as familiar with. It's also a good idea to record a video of yourself giving the speech beforehand. Then you'll be able to watch it later and gain an understanding of which areas you need to make improvements in. 3. Don't fear moments of silence. We all blank out sometimes. Perhaps you've experienced this while giving a presentation at school or simply while talking to a friend. If you ever find yourself getting flustered during a presentation, remember that what may feel like an eternity of silence is often just a matter of a few seconds. Your audience won't be too bothered by a few moments of silence anyway. Take a couple of seconds to slow down, breathe, and get back on track. 4. Challenge your worries. When you're feeling afraid, you might experience a sense of dread and be concerned that the worst possible thing is going to happen. This is called catastrophizing, and it's a fairly common symptom of anxiety. In order to challenge your worries and fears, you may want to write them down and reflect on why you're feeling so afraid. This will help you sort out your feelings and combat your anxiety. It'll also help you gauge how likely it is that the worst possible scenario will actually happen. 5. Know your topic. The more you understand about the topic, the easier it'll be for you to talk about it for a long time. Just consider how many hours you could potentially spend talking about something you're super passionate about. If you know your topic and are passionate about it, then your words should flow pretty freely while you're giving your speech. There's not a huge likelihood that you'll mess up, and even if you stumble over your words a bit, it should be easy enough for you to get back on track. 6. Visualize your success. Keep your eyes on the prize. Spend some time imagining that your presentation will go well, because it probably will, as long as you spend some time practicing. Thinking positive thoughts should help to reduce your anxiety. Thoughts like, I'm going to kill this presentation, or I'm going to knock this out of the park, might even give you an extra boost of confidence. In this presentation, I'm going to be discussing some strategies you can use to sharpen your communication skills as a leader. Communicating effectively is hard, especially when you're leading an organization or even just a big group of people. These days, communication skills are in high demand, as a lot of workplaces have made the switch from in-office to remote work or a combination of the two. If you're not exactly sure where to start when it comes to developing your communication skills as a leader, you're not alone. Even seasoned leaders struggle with communication issues, and it's only natural to wonder how you can sharpen your skills and communicate more effectively with your audience. Without further ado, here are 5 strategies you can use to improve your communication skills and, in turn, become a better leader. 1. Keep your audience in mind. Consider what matters most to your audience. When you choose to speak about something that actually caters to the interests of your audience, they'll be a lot more likely to listen and engage with what you're saying. This is all about tailoring your communication so that what you're saying will resonate with people on an individual level. This is also just one of many reasons why planning out your speeches and meetings beforehand is so important. Remember, you're not just trying to get your point across, you're trying to inspire your audience at the same time. 2. Keep it concise. Have you ever had a hard time grasping something that someone was saying simply because they were bombarding you with too much information? This happens more often than you might think, especially in workplaces. Even the most engaged audience will eventually get bored. Minds tend to wander, and no one really wants to listen to a super convoluted message. When speaking, keep your message concise and use simple language. Your audience will surely appreciate it. 3. Make eye contact. Now, you shouldn't stare at the person you're talking to, as this might make them feel uncomfortable. Maintaining regular eye contact with them, though, is a great way to make them feel like they're being listened to. It's also a great way to gauge whether or not the person you're speaking to is understanding what you're saying. Body language is quite telling, and if a person seems uninterested, distracted, or confused while you're speaking to them, you should probably try to relay your message in a different way. 4. Ask for feedback. If you're not sure whether the person or group you're speaking to actually understood your message, you can ask them to recap what you just said in their own words. This is an excellent way to help people retain information, and it can reduce potential misunderstandings down the line as well. You can also ask your audience to share questions about how you could improve your presentation and speaking skills. 5. Minimize distractions. When you're having a face-to-face conversation with someone, you should make sure that there aren't any distractions around. This might mean turning off your phone, asking the person you're talking to put their phone away, or shutting your office door during one-on-one meetings. If possible, try not to plan meetings right before lunch or at the end of the day. People won't be fully open to having a conversation if they're getting ready to eat lunch or go home. No one is going to be retaining much information anyway if they have one foot out the door. Just plan out your day accordingly and schedule meetings at appropriate, convenient times whenever possible. In this presentation, I'll be discussing the differences between one-on-one communication and group communication. You might have been told that one is better than the other, or that one-on-one communication is basically a waste of time because you could just tell all of your team members the same information as a group. There are many reasons why both one-on-one and group communication are important and necessary. Let's get started. The importance of personal connection. For introverts in particular, the difference between one-on-one communication and group communication is pretty significant. As a leader, it's important to keep in mind that most introverted people would rather have one-on-one or small group conversations with you than participate in big meetings where lots of people are involved. In general, introverted people are able to form meaningful connections with others more effectively during one-on-one conversations. Beyond a group of 4, you sense a shift in dynamics. It becomes a group discussion rather than an intimate conversation, and the potential for personal connection essentially dissipates. Competition in groups. In larger groups, the atmosphere might feel a bit more competitive in nature. Everyone might be vying for the attention of the leader, meaning you'll basically fall into the role of mediator. That said, group conversations are a great way to bounce ideas around a room and observe how these ideas sit with different people in the group. For this reason, group communication scenarios tend to be great for brainstorming sessions. Of course, some people may not feel inclined to share their ideas with a big group of people, in which case one-on-one conversations with these individuals will be necessary as well. Facilitating is necessary. When it comes to group communication, a lot more facilitation of the conversation in general is needed. People are likely to speak over each other and not really listen to one another. This is because they'll be forming the responses in their head rather than actively listening to what the current speaker is saying. When leading group meetings that go awry, it's a smart idea to meet one-on-one with individuals who didn't get a chance to speak during the meeting. That way, you're ensuring that everyone's voice is being heard, which is what makes a great leader. Upholding personas. The other great thing about one-on-one conversations is that you won't have to worry about people trying to uphold their personas, so to speak. During group meetings, everyone is trying to act a certain way. Again, while some people might fight to try and impress you, others won't want to step on anyone else's toes. If you're really trying to have a meaningful conversation with someone, a one-on-one meeting will honestly be your best bet. Small group meetings can work well too, so make sure to keep that in mind. One-on-one versus group support. Ultimately, people are more likely to let their guard down during one-on-one conversations. They're more likely to share how they're really feeling, since there won't be other people around to potentially judge them. There is a certain level of support that can come with group conversations, though. When one person shares a great idea with the group will likely hype them up, which might make the person sharing feel more confident about disclosing their ideas during future meetings. As you can see, both one-on-one communication and group communication methods are necessary, especially in a work environment. Both have their benefits and both have their downsides, so it's really best to try to incorporate a healthy balance of both when it comes to leading your team members.